So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Military Women's Memorial for an incredible evening of celebration. I never want to learn again how hard it is to get a Congressional Gold Medal through. Never. This is the highest civilian award, and this is for the Hello Girls of World War I. Now this legislation, this bill, was first introduced by Congressman Emanuel Cleaver in 2019, 6 years ago. It took 3 full 2-year sessions of Congress to get this done. Now this extraordinary recognition by our Congress and the nation is a fitting close to the Hello Girls journey, a 100-year-plus journey of fits and starts, a close that I dare say none of them could have ever imagined was the way their journey would end. And I can't think of a more fitting place for us to begin the celebration than here at the Military Women's Memorial. So many thanks to our generous supporters and sponsors that rolled in behind this when, as soon as we knew we had it signed as the Congressional Gold Medal, I started talking to the Doughboy Foundation. I talked to the Army Women's Foundation, and when I realized that the Army Women's Foundation Scholarship and Hall of Fame ceremony was on March 19th here in Northern Virginia, I said, guess what date we're choosing to do the Hello Girls? So for the Army Women's Foundation, you can relax now. Your event is over. Just celebrate with us. So I want to say thank you to our lead sponsor, the Army Women's Foundation, to AT&T, to the Association of the United States Army, and to the Military Order of the World War's Northern Virginia chapter for helping to make this celebration possible. Thank you all so much. And I've said this many times, and I'll say it again, we can never do what we do without the generosity of organizations such as these, organizations who believe in what we do and the women this place honors and represents. So thank you for being here this evening, not only to represent your organization, but to join in the celebration of the Hello Girls. I also want to give a shout out to our friends who are with us this evening from Capitol Hill, as well as the UK, French, and Canadian embassies, all who encourage support for the Congressional Gold Medal legislation, as well as our distinguished guests that are representing embassies here in the National Capital. I saw so many here, and I don't want to call any of them out, but I didn't know what the Guatemala military uniform looked like, but I do now. Also, welcome to our friends from the American Legion who helped to ensure this Congressional Gold Medal came to reality, to the Blue Star families, to Allied Forces Foundation, to the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs Center for Women Veterans, certainly the World War I Centennial Commission, the Doughboy Foundation, the Washington Tattoo, and the National Bell Festival. We're also delighted to have several members of our board here from the Military Women's Memorial, as well as our Capital Campaign Committee with us this evening. And a very heartfelt welcome home to the memorial's immediate past president, Major General D. McWilliams. Welcome. For any of you that know what I mean when I say you high five on the tarmac, that's about what we did as she left and I came into this role. But when I pulled open my top desk drawer, she'd left a little sticky note. And she said, congratulations, you're walking into the best job you'll ever have. And she was right. Now, while all of us here tonight are very special guests, I want to single out the Mark that I've been trying to single out this whole time, because anybody that has anything to do with the Hello Girls knows who Mark Ho is. He's a lawyer, And in the 1970s, when he was hearing about the Hello Girls trying to even be recognized as veterans 60 years after they had served in the Army, Mark stepped alongside Hello Girl Merle Egan and persevered until that legislation was passed in 1977 to grant them recognition as full veterans in the U.S. Armed Forces. So Mark, please stand and let us recognize you. We get a hand. Thank you, Mark. This was the same legislation that also restored Dr. Mary Walker's Medal of Honor and acknowledged that the women Air Force service pilots of World War II were in fact also veterans. It's an incredible landmark, and Mark decided they're already working on this. Let's insert our information into there, and it worked. You never know how these things will work out. Well, during World War I, the 19 teens, nearly all switchboard operators, because for the young people in the room, they could not talk by just looking at your smartphone and making it happen. There were people involved in connecting you. But nearly all switchboard operators here in the United States were trained by AT&T, and they were women. Many were trained just up the road here near Fort Meade. Yet when the American Expeditionary Forces, the AEF, deployed to France, they used male personnel, male, M-A-L-E, personnel, to staff these vital parts of the telephone network. When General Pershing arrived, he made a personal request for a small unit of those trained women to serve as switchboard operators and real-time translators so that the French and American officers could coordinate under fire. More than 7,600 women volunteered for the first 100 slots. 7,600 women said, "Put me in, coach," for 100 billets. Eventually, 223 women and 2 men would serve in France in Signal Corps telephone operator unit, female, known as the Hello Girls. Because when they connected the switches, hello, and they were the Hello Girls. Another 57 of these soon-to-be Hello Girls were on the docks here in the United States, ready to get on a ship to sail to France to be the next unit when the armistice on November 11th, 1918 was signed. So we're here tonight to celebrate all of them, and joining us from that storied company that made it happen for the Hello Girls is Jill Singer, AT&T's Vice President for Federal Solutions. Jill leads AT&T business activities for the federal government, supporting various civilian departments and agencies, as well as the Departments of Defense, Homeland Security, Justice, the U.S. intelligence community, and the White House. She oversees a global workforce delivering strategic technology solutions and professional services focused on network transformation, infrastructure modernization, wireless communications, they would have loved you for that, and advanced technical capabilities. In her years of government and industry experience, they include positions as the Chief Information Officer for the National Reconnaissance Office, Deputy Chief Information Officer for the Central Intelligence Agency, and Director of the Diplomatic Telecommunications Service for Department of State. Please welcome to the podium, Jill Singer.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having AT&T here with you tonight. Phyllis, a big thanks to you and to everybody else at the Military Women's Memorial. I have never been here. It's a stunning space. I really appreciate learning this and being able to share it with family and friends who come to the DC area to see all the great memorials that we have to offer. And I also want to thank you for hosting a very lovely event to everybody who was part of that. I'm excited to honor the legacy of the incredible women and the two men. You said there were two men? The incredible women and the two men. And celebrate their recognition as recipients of the Congressional Gold Medal. For more than 100 years, AT&T has supported active military personnel, their families, and veterans. And we're honored to say this includes the amazing group of 223 women called Hello Girls. AT&T trained and prepared these women at 6 locations across the United States. As Phyllis noted, the training was not easy. 15% of the applicants failed the operator training. That means the women who made it through were the best of the best. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how this was evidenced by General Pershing when the Hello Girls made it to France. General Pershing made sure the Hello Girls were on duty during the busiest times because they could connect calls at lightning speed, back in the day when you needed a patch cable operator. It took them only 10 seconds compared to the men in the Army Signal Corps who took a full minute. Sorry to our gentlemen friends in the audience. During the major battle at Saint-Mihiel, sorry, I'll probably mispronounce it, but you'll know what I mean. 6 operators rotated through 24-hour shifts at headquarters. Typically, the men worked the less busy overnight shifts, but in this case, Colonel Parker Hitt took the men off because they would not be able to handle the rush of business. That is a quote from Colonel Parker Hitt. Before the operators joined the war effort, the American forces were only able to place 13,000 calls a day. After the Hello Girls joined, that number increased to 36,000 calls a day. And by the end of the war, more than 25 million local calls and 870,000 long-distance calls had been placed over the American system. All of this illustrates just how essential the Hello Girls were to military communications during World War I. Today, AT&T is proud to continue the Hello Girls legacy of connecting those who protect and serve our nation through our communication support to the Department of Defense and the rest of the federal government. We also continue to invest in and recruit talented veterans and military spouses, with more than 10,000 of our employees identifying as veterans today. And we've not strayed far from our roots, from a history of training the technical workforce of the future. Our AT&T Catapult IT Apprenticeship Program, originally held in Columbia, Maryland, right near where they were trained, helps match entry-level IT talent with the needs of the national security intelligence community agencies. We want to make sure that they're prepared from day one. It's an honor for me personally, and it's an honor for AT&T to be part of the Hello Girls story. We are proud to see them get the recognition, and thank you, Mr. Ho, get the recognition that they deserve. And as I wrap up, I want to offer a moment to express my gratitude. First, I'd like to express it to the families of the Hello Girls. Thank you for continuing to advocate for these pioneering women. Second, to the members of Congress, it took a while, who worked to secure this important recognition, but we got there. And finally, thanks to the many men and women serving our nation and making sacrifices today to protect our country. It's an honor to support you, both at home and abroad. On behalf of AT&T, thank you.
Thank you again. And there are vintage headsets that the women wore, or like what they might have worn, on display in the reception area. So hopefully even afterwards you'll go in and have a look at what you think the little thing that goes in our ear is a problem. Imagine the weight. They look like they're heavy, like it would hurt your neck, but they kept going because it was their job. So we're privileged this evening to be joined by representatives from 2 organizations whose primary focus was and is World War I. Their mission is educating the public about World War I, America's part in it, and celebrating the 4.7 million men and women who donned the uniform, left their families, and fought, and sometimes died, in the war to end all wars and to protect our freedoms. The first is the World War I Centennial Commission, created by Congress to plan, develop, and execute programs, projects, and activities to commemorate the centennial of World War I. And the other is the Doughboy Foundation, whose mission is to support programs, projects, and activities that educate the public about America's participation in World War I. Both played key roles in envisioning and building the recently dedicated World War I Memorial in downtown DC, right in front of the Willard Hotel. It's beautiful. While the commission has sunsetted, its mission complete, the Doughboy Foundation continues its education mission. A popular activity is daily 5 p.m. playing of taps at the World War I Memorial, frequently by a World War I doughboy reenactor. Now, particularly relevant to this evening's celebration is the tireless work both of these organizations did, literally down to the wire, to get the Congressional Gold Medal for the Hello Girls over the finish line. Joining us this evening to deliver celebratory remarks are Mr. Yari Villanueva, the president of the Doughboy Foundation, who will be followed by Mrs. Denise Van Buren, chair of the Doughboy Foundation, and a past president general of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. Then Mr. Daniel Dayton, retired executive director of the World War I Centennial Commission. And last but not least, retired Navy Captain Chris Christopher, board member of the Doughboy Foundation. Yari, the floor is yours.
Okay, before I start, I guess I have to come from a male perspective on this. I must say that in World War I, you know, the soldiers who fought in the trenches, the soldiers who were out on guard duty, and they hear the phone ring, and they pick it up, and they hear a woman's voice say, "Hello." That must have been the greatest, the sweetest sound to those soldiers, and the most wonderful. It reminded them, of course, of home, and that was so important. What happened to morale must have just been incredible. Well, I got to tell you, I'm honored to have been appointed the president of the Doughboy Foundation, continuing the fantastic work that the World War I Centennial Commission has done. In 10 relatively short years, and I say short considering all that was done, and you know we all know how long it takes to get things done here in Washington. Well, within 10 years, that memorial was conceived, built, dedicated, and now stands, as Phyllis said, as a tribute to the 4.7 million Americans who served during World War I. And of course, among those were the 223 women, and 2 men, right? 2 men, won't forget, the telephone operators known as the Hello Girls. The Congressional Gold Medal is the oldest and highest civilian award in the United States, along with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The medal honors those individually or those in a group who, quote, who have performed an achievement that has an impact on American history and culture, and that is likely to be recognized as a major achievement in the recipient's field long after the achievement, unquote. Well, I cannot think of a more deserving group than the Hello Girls of World War I. Their story has been handed down through generations, documented in books, shown in documentaries, celebrated through music, as you'll hear in just a bit. They inspire all Americans with their service, their dedication, and their sacrifice. And speaking of inspiration, Denise Van Buren has been a champion for women in her role as the President General of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And she has accepted the post of the chair of the Doughboy Foundation after she left the DAR. And she has led our foundation now through its first year. And I'm honored and privileged to call her a colleague and a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Denise Van Buren.
Hello. I couldn't resist. 5 simple letters that create a word that welcomes all of you here today, and one that reminds all of us of a band of remarkable bilingual servicewomen who answered our nation's call to serve during the Great War, in a story that we all know went unappreciated for far too long. That is, until now. Hello to each of you who accepted the mission to gain recognition for these women for what they earned. They earned on the battlefields of France. As we, of course, all know today and heard earlier, the Hello Girls were about 235 American women who served in the U.S. Army Signal Corps, tasked with improving communications on the Western Front, and nicknamed, of course, for that simple greeting of hello when answering their calls. In the larger picture, of course, they responded to a call that was far greater, for it took great courage to answer that call from General Pershing himself. Thousands of women, as Phyllis noted, applied to fulfill Pershing's request. Those who were accepted into the program underwent a very rigorous selection process. They had to agree to serve for the duration of the war. These women were evaluated on tests that were similar to those provided to Army officer candidates. They were individually investigated by the Secret Service. Because of the nature of the work that required them to handle highly confidential information, their loyalty and their motivations for serving were investigated more thoroughly than the average soldier. Yet, despite the fact that they worked on the front lines and 2 of them would ultimately die in uniform, these women, as we have learned, were denied military status and benefits, again, for far too long. Finally recognized in 1977, it took a full century for their historic contribution to be recognized with the medal that we recognize here tonight. Let us believe that recognition delayed feels all the sweeter. To their descendants, be proud of their service and their sacrifice, and thank you for your invaluable support that gained them the recognition they deserved. And I know we're going to hear from them later, but would all of the descendants who are here please stand so that we can thank you for the work that you did to ensure this recognition, the descendants of the Hello Girls. More than 7 years ago, our World War I Centennial Commission, which conceived and built the nation's new World War I Memorial, unanimously voted to support this effort as part of our larger educational mission. Many partners stepped forward to work on the passage, the Women's Military Museum, of course, but also the American Legion, the VFW, the producers of the off-Broadway show, Hello Girls, the musical, and many other organizations and individuals, and we thank them all. But on behalf of the Doughboy Foundation, which does continue a mission to ensure that Americans never again forget the struggles, the sacrifices, the accomplishments of the World War I generation, I must single out our Chris Christopher, who's rolling his eyes right now. Chris will be speaking later. He personally accepted this challenge on our behalf with a passion and a dedication that was nothing short of Herculean. Chris developed websites, databases, and personalized letters for every member of Congress at least twice. He conducted meetings with the descendants of the Hello Girls, with organizations, with individuals, all for the common good of this cause. We thank and we commend Chris and all of you for keeping up this good fight to get these women the recognition that they so dangerously earned. So why should these women and what they did matter to us in 2025? Well, because they willingly left the safety of home for the danger of the battlefield. Because they set an inspiring example of selfless, patriotic service to our nation in an era when few women even worked outside the home. because they risked their futures for the sake of ours. Let today be a call for each of us to not simply admire, but to also follow their remarkable example of service to these United States. Let what they did inspire each of us to do more. As is so eloquently carved on the walls of our new memorial, the words of a young poet, Archibald MacLeish, "We were young, they say, we have died. Remember us." Today, we remember the Hello Girls, and we salute them. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm honored indeed to represent the men and women of the United States World War I Centennial Commission. The commission, as you've heard, sunset at the end of last year, but all of them are here in spirit, and all of them have been so tremendously supportive of what we've done. In fact, it was October 2nd of 1918, right, Chris, that under the chairmanship of Terry Hamby, in fulfillment of his responsibility under the law, advised the Congress that it was the unanimous position of the commission. I think the vote took 3 minutes. So yes, of course we're going to do this. We're going to award the Congressional Gold Medal to the United States Army Signal Corps women telephone operators, the Hello Girls. It seemed a reasonable thing to do. It seemed a simple thing to do, and an appropriate thing to do. So it's an honor to stand before you here today, 4 Congresses and nearly 7 years on, as we recognize this group of remarkable women, but it happened. For the trailblazers, for the patriots, and at long last, recipients of this important medal. The recognition was earned by them, but realized on their behalf by every one of you in this room that played an important part. In particular, I would like to recognize Senator John Tester and Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, who have representatives here tonight, and their tireless staff on the Hill that drove the effort, and my longtime colleague and friend, Captain Chris Christopher, who you'll hear from in a minute. Chris has mastered the art of personalizing letters in Google Docs, and do that. Address a letter to anybody in the Congress at any moment of the day or night. So you know when they came home, they were told they hadn't officially served at all. We certainly know better. When General Pershing needed a rapid, reliable communication network in France, the Army turned to the women. Over 200 bilingual switchboard operators, fast, precise, unshakable under fire, linked American forces to their allies, kept battlefield commands moving, and proved beyond question that women belonged in military service. They worked through air raids. They handled messages that turned the tide of battle. They endured trench conditions and military discipline. They wore the cloth of their country. But they were denied recognition, denied benefits, denied their rightful place in history for far too long. As you all know, that's now changed. With this Congressional Gold Medal, we honor their courage, and it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the Commission to acknowledge their sacrifice and to say without hesitation that these women were soldiers, every bit as much as their male counterparts. To the families here today, your grandmothers, your great-grandmothers, and aunts set a precedent that lives on. Their legacy is in every woman who has served since, every woman who wears the uniform today, every woman who leads, commands, and stands for our great nation. Today, the Hello Girls take their rightful place in history, and we're here to say thank you. We see you. We will not forget. May this medal remind us of their service. May it inspire generations to come. And may we never take for granted the voices, strong and clear and unwavering, that answered the call. Thank you. It's my honor and privilege now to introduce the guy you've been hearing about all night, Chris Christopher, who's going to tell us how it's done.
Well, as Phyllis mentioned, by the way, the first thing they taught us about public speaking is look your audience in the eye. As Phyllis mentioned, the telephones were a lot different in 1917, 1918. Fortunately, we have one here because when I printed out all the stuff to bring with me, I didn't print out my notes. But I'm sure the Hello Girls will be appreciative of the fact that you can actually look at them on your phone. You've heard a lot about the process and what happened, and so I won't repeat all that, but I do want to thank some people who were involved and need to be recognized. You've heard about Marco, and we can't say enough about him. The guy who seems to have put this thing in somebody's ear is a fellow named Ed Saunders from the wide open plains of Montana, who seems to have mentioned this to Senator Tester. And this kind of percolated through the process, that it became something that as was suggested, the World War I Centennial Commission said, yeah, we should do this. I have to admit, that wasn't really paying any attention to that, really, until 2019, when I had to put an article on our website, which I ran for the commission, about the awards being presented to these people, Jim Theres and Mark Ho and Elizabeth Cobbs, who were getting these big, wonderful awards for the Hello Girls. And I'm going, I think I've heard of this. Didn't we recommend them for something? Well, this kind of went on, and as it went, and I want to correct the people who said it was 3 Congresses, it was 4 Congresses. The commission made the recommendation in 2018. It was introduced in the 115th Congress, but with only a few months to go, it wasn't surprising it didn't get passed, but it was introduced again in the 116th and got nowhere. In the 117th, it didn't get anywhere. So the 118th came in, and this Dayton fellow says, Chris, you got to get this passed. And I said, well, what have we done? What do we do? Well, it wasn't all that clear, but we started doing it again, and we weren't really getting anywhere. And we're going up to the hill and talking to mostly to staffers and to interns, and encouraging them to get their boss to sign up for this. And nothing was really happening. And so we had a meeting we had a session on Capitol Hill on, remember it well, September 18th of 2023, where we briefed a whole bunch of interns and staffers in a conference room on Capitol Hill, and spent a bunch of money doing it. It was like, what are we doing here? But there was a group of people at that meeting. And it was some descendants who you will hear from, and it was some authors and filmmakers that you'll hear from. And the catalytic process that came out of that meeting was really wonderful. And one of the things that came out of it was me saying, we're talking to these staffers, but how do we know they're talking to their boss? Let's write a letter to their damn boss. And so we did. Over the next 3 months, we wrote a letter to every single senator who was not already a co-sponsor. And I need to call out Charles Pauley, who was one of our wonderful interns for the commission and continued to work for us later, who did all the research and found draft cards for about 50 some odd out of 60 senators, the draft cards of their grandfather or great-grandfather who served in the war. So we were able to send a personal letter to each senator. And Dan and I wore out pairs of shoes, walking around Capitol Hill delivering those letters. We got a bump out of that at the end of the year. And so at the start of the next year, we were trying to build on that, and then I got an email from a defunct page on our website from somebody saying, hey, I want to be an intern. And this young man named Jack Manley said, I've got interest in World War I, and I want to do this stuff. And it's like, well, we don't really do interns, and we don't have any money anymore, but you're welcome to help if you want. And he said, well, I'm coming to D.C. He came to D.C. that summer. And he helped us write a letter to every single non-sponsor in the House of Representatives, along with a flyer describing the Hello Girls from each of their congressional districts, which I have to thank Ryan Hegg and Diane Betcher. I think Diane's here. Diane Betcher's here, yeah, who actually came up with flyers for each of these Hello Girls, 300 plus different biographical things we were able to put in letters that Jack was able to print and put in folders, and he and our descendants and everybody else who could wandered around Capitol Hill and delivered one to every single congressman. Wow. In August 8th of 2024, we had all the required signatories in the Senate. Now we turn to the House, and we really pushed in the House. The Senate passed the legislation in September, and we said, we've got it. And the House. And okay, but now we have all the co-sponsors we need in the House. In October. And then it was the great silence on the Hill, nothing happening. And frankly, I was going, oh my God, I'll do this again. Until on remembering days, December 13, when an email from Miss Phyllis here said, hey, it's in the NDAA. And then we got the chance to watch the committee. Of course, who watches C-SPAN if they don't have to? But we got to watch the committee pass the NDAA on the Hill, and then on December 24, Christmas Eve, it got signed, hopefully not by an owner pin, by the president, and became law. So we have talked with the Mint. Sorry to report that it's going to be 1 to 2 more years before the medal actually eventuates, because it's the government and it's a process. But it's in the chute. There's 10 ahead of us, but it's going to get done. We've got our team working. We'll have input into it, and so it won't be a pearls before swine thing. It's going to actually be something that'll involve the descendants and involve those involved. So happy to report that. But as someone who had a little bit of involvement in World War I once said, this is not the end, and it's not the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning. Because, as Dan said, we're not going to forget them, and there's more to do. So many of these fellow girls are there's a lot of them we don't know where they're buried. And most of them we do know where they're buried. There's no indication that they were a veteran. Now, we fixed that for several last year. You'll hear about Marie Edmé LaRue. You'll hear about Grace Banker, a girl from my hometown, New Orleans, out in California, got a grave marker. The VA, I think, now is taking this up, and they're going to want to help and get all these women the grave markers that indicates that, damn, they were a veteran. By the way, over on the hill here, in the cemetery next to us, there's 2 buried there. Neither one is indicated as a veteran. They're both buried with husbands. So we need to get markers in the grave showing that they were soldiers, and they get that. And then what's my last note here? And then, so that's got to be done. We initiated the discussion with the Mint about, once we get this Mint and once we get this medal and it's all designed and it's done, can we get a miniature of it to put on the headstones? So we show these women earn the Congressional Gold Medal. We'll be working on that too. And finally, we did a lot of work over the past 7 years getting this done. And we got a lot of information that's been rescued from obscurity. We need to find a permanent home for that. This would be a good place for it. We may find another place for it, but we want to codify all this so once again, all the information about these women who served and changed the world is put in a place where scholars and soldiers can find it in the future to do research on it. Because, as has been said, but I'll say it again, they made a decisive change in tactical wartime communications, because before the Hello Girls, and even with the men, one of the switchboards, it wasn't the same. You had pigeons, you had cannon shots, you had smoke signals, you had mirrors, you had telegraph. But being able for General Foch to be able to pick up the phone and say, Cook, connect me with General Pershing, bang, and have them talk to each other, that is the beginning of tactical communication as we understand it today. And another person who worked very hard with us, she's here tonight, Linda Jansen from the Signal Corps, can talk a lot about that, is how that really is just tactical communication was changed for wartime forever for the U.S. by these women, so they made it a thing. Okay, I'll go talk some more, but that's the story. Thank all of you for being here, and I'm so glad this is finished because I don't have to do it again.
Yeah, you can tell none of them really liked doing this work at all, right? So as Chris and Dan and others were talking about, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver helped to introduce this Congressional Gold Medal legislation for him initially in 2019. Is that after that 60-year struggle they'd gone through just to be recognized as servicewomen, and now to try to get the Congressional Gold. And as he said, it was finally passed in the NDAA at the 11th hour. You talk about stories, right? What's the end of World War I? the 11th hour of the 11th day. So it feels like it was the 11th hour of 2024 to get this doggone thing signed. But we do have Congressman Cleaver. He couldn't be here with us tonight, but he wanted to be part of it, even if it was only virtually. So we do have a video clip we'd like to share with you.
Hello, I'm Emmanuel Cleaver. I represent Missouri's 5th Congressional District. And I am so pleased that I have the opportunity to share just a few words with you to let you know how happy I am to have been able, during the 118th Congress, introduce a successful bill that will now place the Women's Military Corps, the Hello Girls, in the history books henceforth and forevermore. It took a Herculean effort on the part of the United States and its allies in Europe to win that war or to win that peace. And I think an argument can be made that an inextricable connection to the victory was the work that these women, these unheralded women, did. And I am pleased that I was able to introduce legislation that would bring forth their good work to get an opportunity to spread it around the country and to also speak to this generation of young women and perhaps generations with my young granddaughter that the military is open to all and all can make significant contributions. So I'm apologetic that I can't be there with you in person, but please know I appreciate very, very much the fact that you took notice of what we were able to accomplish in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, and then the President signing the legislation. The World War I Museum and Monument is here in Kansas City, Missouri, and I introduced that legislation as well. And so you can see there's a theme running here that I want to make sure that during my time in Congress, if there are entities, groups such as the Hello Girls, who made such a contribution to this nation, that it really, really cannot be forgotten. And I have taken this liberty to try to make it work, and so far it has. God bless.
Now, I'm not certain if you noticed this little paperweight in front of the podium here. It was delivered yesterday, and you are in for a very special treat. Some of us in the room were also able to enjoy when they came and did a one-night stand at the Kennedy Center. But we have, made possible by the Doughboy Foundation, this is called Making History. It's the closing number by the musical The Hello Girls, which premiered in New York City in 2018.
And then in May of last year at the Kennedy Center. This show chronicles the groundbreaking history of the first women soldiers who served at the front. And tonight, the role as chief operator Grace Banker is sung by Cat Wolf, and composer Peter Mills will accompany on the piano. Start off for a second. With trumpet player Kevin Paul, Making History captures the moment when Grace reflects on her experience and looks to the future. Cat, Peter, Kevin, the floor, the piano is yours.
We
I'm ready to go. I didn't even need another coffee or anything. Now, in 2017, I didn't start working here until 2019, and I knew nothing about the Hello Girls until then. But in 17, Elizabeth Cobbs knew something about the Hello Girls. As a historian and a best-selling novelist, a documentary filmmaker, she released her book, The Hello Girls, America's First Women Soldiers. And bringing this all but forgotten story of America's first women soldiers to the public. Lauded by many, including Cokie Roberts, who called the book an eye-opener, Cokie actually said, you know, I've covered the military and women for decades. How did I not know about them? And she went on to say that Cobbs unearths the original letters and diaries of these forgotten heroines and weaves them into a fascinating narrative with energy and zest. So thanks to Elizabeth, folks everywhere learned about these intrepid women who went to war before they even had the right to vote. It's my distinct pleasure to invite to the stage best-selling author and friend of the memorial, Elizabeth Cobbs.
When I began my research on the Hello Girls 10 years ago, a good friend, my oldest friend in the historical profession and a winner of the Pulitzer Prize, asked me, he said, "Are you sure it's enough for a book?" And I think his question had two meanings. First, could I find enough of the mostly vanished records to tell a real story? At that time, there were a few 5 to 8 page mentions in various compendiums on the war, but they were sketchy. They didn't give you much of a story. So I needed to find the guts behind the AT&T promotional materials and the newspaper articles and the World War I records in order to walk in the shoes, the laced combat boots of these women. So could I find enough? And I think the second meaning of his question was the story important enough for a whole book? My friend made me doubt, but I persisted, like the women veterans themselves who came home after the war and were told that their story was not enough to win them the recognition and respect of the United States Army or the U.S. Congress. So my first job was to find enough, and I went to the women's individual military records in St. Louis and in Washington, D.C. But my first big break came when I came across, yes, the man we've been talking about, Mark Ho, who was, I found, traced through the Seattle Bar Association because he had been an attorney. At age 29, he contacted Merle Egan, 89, who was the last person trying to find a way in her late 80s into her 90s to get these women recognized. And Mark, at age 29, called her having read an article and said, you know, can you use some help? So if you shake Mark Ho's hand tonight, you're shaking the hand of Merle Egan. So from him, and I went to see him in Seattle, I came away with the record, The Diary of Bertha Hunt. And from the Diary of Bertha Hunt, I tracked down the descendants of Louise Le Breton, and from them I got the memoir of Merle Egan. And then I was left the last sort of holy grail, and I engaged a friend who's kind of a private investigator, and she gave me a phone number. And she said, if you call this number, this will probably, we hope, go to a retired persons community in New Hampshire, and this might be a descendant of Grace Banker. And I got a hold of that man, Robert Tinby, and from him I got the Grace Banker diary. I'd like to point out that two of those 3 elderly gentlemen who had these records are now deceased. And if I had not called them when I happened to, those records would never have surfaced again, and they would be gone. And history is precious. If we don't guard it, if we don't document it, it's not there for us later on. So I also found enough to establish the meaningful contribution others have spoken to of the first uniformed women soldiers who wore the insignia of the U.S. Army. And I think before this, if you had asked somebody, well, who were the first women soldiers? they would have gone, oh, well, I'm hemming and hawing. Was it Deborah Sampson who pretended to be a man in the Revolutionary War? Or was it Harriet Tubman who, there wasn't a unit we could point to, and now we can. Nowadays, I think there's a tendency to worry that if we fully acknowledge various groups that have contributed to our nation, that we are diluting our nation's story, and that we are diluting the stories that we already know. And the fact that Hello Girls were told this pretty explicitly. They were told, when they asked later, oh, you did not take the oath. I found the oath in every record, in every file I opened in St. Louis. They were told, well, you were well paid, which meant that they got the same salary as the men they served alongside. And they were told in the end, in the 1960s, well, if we use the word veteran for you, that will make the word veteran less special if it includes you. But I say that when we acknowledge the meaningful contributions of different groups, including women, that we are not diluting our nation's story, we are growing our nation's story. If we include everyone, if we acknowledge their part, then we have everyone. And to be a strong democratic nation, we need everyone. So I would like to thank especially the U.S. Army Signal Corps Regimental Association and Linda in particular, Colonel Linda Jansen, for awarding me the rank of Brevet Colonel. Tonight is my first opportunity to wear this medal for writing the first and definitive story of the Hello Girl, which had been actively suppressed and was nearly forgotten. And I want to thank you all of you, every single one of you, for being here tonight to honor these women for their magnificent part in winning World War I, and thereby opening new avenues for every American woman to walk as full citizens of the United States. Thank you.
Now, you saw the cover of her book on the screens. We have a limited number of those still in the gift shop, and if you get one tonight, if you talk really nicely to that lady, she might sign it for you. Now, it's my privilege to bring to the stage Jim Theris, a man of many, many extraordinary talents, who's an award-winning writer and independent filmmaker, who not only wrote and produced the documentary on the Hello Girls, he also did one on the 6888. In this 2018 film, the story of the Hello Girls is told through 100-year-old letters, photos, rare archival footage, and the only known audio of a real Hello Girl, and interviews with family and historians, including Elizabeth Cobbs. Screened here at the memorial many times, and most recently just this past Sunday, the Hello Girls brings to life a story that, as Jim describes it, was stuck in the nooks and crannies of American history. Jim, please join me.
Good evening, everyone. I remember looking at the program, and I noticed that I followed Elizabeth, and I thought to myself, can I go before her, and then she can bring it home? It's just wonderful. So good for everyone to be here. Before I start my 30 minutes of remarks, I caught Phyllis looked right up from the program. Let's play the trailer real quick. Thank you.
It's a war that's sort of lost for Americans. In many ways, it really was the service of women in World War I that made the difference.
They promised them that if they went, they would be given veteran status. That was a part of the package. And so they went. They served at the front lines, or the combat went to where they were. They did a tremendous job.
They were literally handling military secrets in their hands as they're connecting the whole time, because the way the technology worked at the time, operators could hear what was going over the lines. And when they came home, they were told, "You were never soldiers."
One word cost them 60 years.
You know, I love my country, and therefore I want my country to be worth loving. I stood by my word. I want my country to stand by its word to me.
My mom was always proud of her service, and I never understood just how important it was. They were the first women soldiers. We want our history. We want our history.
Peaches today? Candy, I need you to listen to me. I've opened an A line, but the connection is terrible. Just keep the French operator on. Don't let him disconnect. Yes.
Peaches talking. Are you working?
Peaches, vous faites la connexion?
Je contacte.
What a pleasure it was to do that. March 1st, 2018, General D. McWilliams was the president here, is when we first screened the Hello Girls, a world premiere, right here at the Military Women's Memorial. And to be frank, it started a partnership for the last 7 years. Thank you, Phyllis and Marilla and Donna. And every time you'll have me back, and I'm good, I'll be back. Greetings, everyone. I'm Jim Tharis, the director of the Hello Girls documentary. And what a journey it has been. The friends and family that we have met and we have become, many are here in this room, and now our extended family is here in this room. And as glorious as every destination was that we went, and there was a lot of destinations to include walking the halls of Congress, we never thought about the Congressional Gold Medal as the end state. That wasn't even on my radar in 2018. And then we met all these extraordinary people who you met tonight. And somehow, we got it done. And I want to recognize two people that are here from Senator Tester's office. Weston, where are you? There he is over there. Stand up, let him see you, Weston. Yep. And a young gentleman right over there by the name of Brock Bowes from Congressman Cleaver's office. There he is, yeah. Both of them put in the heavy lift of shepherding this through the halls of Congress and putting up with our craziness. And we appreciate it. So for me, the journey started when I had done the documentary, we screened it here, and I made a phone call to the World War I Centennial Commission, and a young gentleman, a retired Navy captain by the name of Chris Islieb, answered the phone. And I said, "Chris, I made this film about some World War I women. They were telephone operators. I would just like to screen it for the commission." And he said, "Oh, you know what, we got a board meeting coming up. Let me present the idea." Called me back a day or two later, and he said, "Yeah, they're interested, but someone mentioned, and I don't know that person's name, and I wish I did, but someone from the board said, had they ever been put in for the Congressional Gold Medal?" And I said, "Well, I don't even know what that is, Chris, so I can't tell you if they have or not." So then he arranged, and you heard his name earlier, he arranged for me, I went to Billings, Montana, and he arranged for me to meet a retired lieutenant colonel. He's here, Ed Saunders. Ed, where are you? There he is, Ed. And Ed got a member of Senator Tester's staff there. She saw the film, brought it back to D.C., and next thing you know, it was on. Still didn't know what it was. So it was born, Congressman Cleaver joined, and then from that point, the next, Chris, was it four congressional cycles that we went through this, and we kept telling the other previous years, and this last year with the descendants, and we all walked the halls, we kept telling them, look, our Hello Girls, there were 50 bills, over 50 bills put forward for them to get their recognition. This is our fourth try, and we're going to be back every year, again and again and again and again. And then I would add, if you don't want to look at this face every year, just sign on for it, would you? And they did. I think that was the key, right, Chris? These women, I have grown over time, and with the descendants and the family and the people that we met, I very early on grew to love these women. Because when I served my time in the Army, I was able to reflect back to those women who had served, and I got a new respect and admiration for them that I served with, and it just amplified when we were talking about them, researching them, and doing the documentary. But this was, as I look back on this journey for the last 7 years, though, sometimes I get a little bit melancholy because 4 of the women that were in the documentary have since passed on, and I want to make sure that I recognize them. The first is a good friend of mine, Sherika Stapp, was a young Army captain. She died at the very tender and young age with 2 adult children at 39. Cokie Roberts, the great journalist, was in the documentary and passed away not long ago. And I remember going to her house. It was a snowstorm that day, and she had just gotten back from the Caribbean. And I said, Cokie, we don't have to do this today. I mean, we can come back. And she said, nope, get over here. My husband's out getting the dogs from the kennel, and I don't want him around right now. I said, we'll be there. And she was so gracious. I remember I went to mic her up, and she just grabbed the mic, and she mic'd herself up and sat down. And I was about to ask a question, and she said, I've already prepared my thoughts. Do you want to just hear them? I said, thinking to myself, well, you're Cokie Roberts. Of course I do. Let me listen to you. Candy McCorkle is a granddaughter of Melina Addie Adam. Candy, when I went to her house, is Ben Hellerstein? Did he make it? Do we know? Ben, there he is. Ben, please stand up. Hi, Ben. Ben was the executor of Candy's estate, and after she had passed just late last year, I gave it some time, and I emailed him, and I said, Candy and I had talked about all this ephemera that she had of her grandmother, Addie, which was laid out all over the table, and walking over the top were her huge Maine Coons. Anyone ever have a Maine Coon cat? Those were Candy's pride and joy. But I emailed him, and I said, Ben, Candy and I had talked about where all of this stuff would go. Do you have any idea? And he said, I was going to contact you, and I'm going to give it some time to see if any descendants want anything. And that time passed, and then he contacted me and said, Jim, where do you think it should go? You know what, folks? I only had one recommendation. You want to guess where it is? Right here at the Military Wheels Memorial. You betcha. And as of last Friday, all of that material is here for archiving and researching at the Military Women's Memorial. What a great legacy for Candy and Melina Adam. Thank you, Ben. Lastly, my dear friend Helen Richard, she was the daughter of Olita Jour, one of the women who profiled in the documentary. You met Helen, she was in the blue, and talked about her grandmother, or her mother. And Helen had joined us along with, and there's the crew right over there, Elizabeth Cobbs, Carolyn Timby, Davia Hazel, and a few others. We went to Chaumont, France on November 11th, 2018, where we ate lunch at General, and Linda Jansen, where's Linda? Linda, there she is. Where we ate lunch at General Pershing's headquarters, and then screened the film to 500 rabid Chaumontians, maybe, I don't know, but the citizens of Chaumont, and then on to Paris. And Helen had such a glorious time. She was, well, I'm going to say mid-80s because she swore me to. She said, Jim, even after I'm gone, you can't tell anyone my age. I said, I will never do that. And she was the first up and the last to go to bed. And we returned home in December of 2018, and I sent her a WhatsApp message, and Helen was the one who taught me how to use WhatsApp. I didn't even know that right? I said, can't I just call you? She said, no, it costs money. WhatsApp me. So I WhatsApped her in December of 2019, and she said to me, I said to her, Helen, how are you doing? I'm still riding high from our visit to Chaumont. And she said, yeah, me too. I've been given 6 months to live. And Helen sadly passed away to that diagnosis, almost to the date. She passed away in May of 2019. But I'll never forget when we were in Chaumont, Helen, she wore her mother's hat and the insignia, and around her she had some dog tags. And every time we took a photo with Helen in it, her dog tags lit up like the sun was right on it, and there was like this halo around the dog tags every time. So I had to have that photo made today to show you that it was at that time when we were looking at the photo, all of us knew that all of the Hello Girls were with us on our journey. Yes. And thank you. And they were very pleased at what we were doing. And Helen also said one other thing to me at the end, probably in March of 2019, the last WhatsApp message. I had mentioned that there was some talk of maybe the 688 getting a Congressional Gold Medal or working on that. And she WhatsApped me and she said, That's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that, Jim. Don't forget about our women. And I said, Helen, we won't. And Helen and Candy and Koki and Sherika, we didn't forget. We won't forget you, and we will never forget our Hello Girls. And lastly, in the not forgetting part, I want to mention that you saw her in the film. I want to mention that it's such an honor to be here again, standing in the house that General Wilma Vaught built. How about that? Yes. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a great journey, and we're looking forward to more. Thank you.
So you saw the trailer to that. We do have the DVD documentary in our gift shop. You do know we're not federally funded. We need you to buy stuff. Help us out here. But this is a special edition. It actually, on the label, it has the Congressional Gold Medal on the documentary itself. Now, joining us tonight also, we're going to bring forward 3 of the family members of this Hello Girls. Carolyn Timby granddaughter of Grace Banker Paddock, the chief operator who deployed to France with the very first group of women, Donna Ayers, grandniece of telephone operator Melina Olive Gerard Shaw, who deployed with the second group, and Catherine Bergeon, granddaughter of Marie Edme LaRue, who deployed with the fourth group of women. Ladies, please join me up here on the stage and tell us a little bit about what this evening means.
March 6, 1918. Aboard at last, after 2 months of preparation in the USA, I have crossed the Rubicon now. There can be no turning back. 32 girls in my charge, several older than I, youngest 19, one is quite old, 35, I think. We are the only women on board the ship, the former Celtic of the White Star Line. March 7, 1918. Sailed this morning in a dismal gray drizzle. Slipped out quietly, decks cleared of all life. No one allowed outside until well out at sea. With faces glued to portholes and doors, watched the Statue of Liberty fade from sight. I suddenly realized what a responsibility I have on my young shoulders. Good evening. I'm Carolyn Timby, and that is an entry from my grandmother, Grace Banker's diary, written 107 years ago. Sadly, I never met her. I recall her artifacts and papers stored in a Signal Corps trunk tucked away under my family's basement stairs for decades. But their significance eluded me until 8 years ago, when Elizabeth Cobbs brought the Hello Girls story to light. Grace Banker was a Barnard College graduate working as a switchboard trainer at AT&T in New York City when she answered the call to serve her country. She was appointed chief operator of the first unit of 33 women and led these pioneering women to France. They faced dangers of war, including German subs and air raids, but remained unwavering in their commitment to connecting the calls. For her leadership, Grace received the Distinguished Service Medal in 1919. One of a few women to receive this honor, which she accepted on behalf of her team, or as she would say, her girls. Tragically, she never saw her recognition. She passed away 17 years before Congress honored the Hello Girls as veterans. I am proud of my grandmother and all the courageous women of the U.S. Signal Corps. Their story is a testament to resilience, teamwork, qualities that resonated deeply with our own efforts. Just as Grace and her team worked together to overcome challenges during the war, the Congressional Gold Medal team embodied that same spirit of collaboration and dedication. I am proud of our team, and I am honored to have many of them here today. Our mission to honor the legacy of these trailblazing women with a Congressional Gold Medal has been achieved, ensuring their contributions will be remembered and celebrated for the years to come. Thank you so much, and it is such an honor to be here, and I'm honored to introduce Catherine Bergeon.
Good evening, everyone. It's with immense joy to be here tonight with you celebrating. I titled my remarks, "The Pigeon Got a Medal First." Imagine in 1918 volunteering for war as a woman at the age of 23. My grandmother, Marie Edme LaRue, did just that. She was one of the 24 French-Canadian-born women in the U.S. Army Signal Corps who was stationed in Paris and in Tours during World War I. My grandmother was born in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Raised in Rhode Island, Edme pursued vocal studies before the war disrupted her plans. She trained under the renowned French-Canadian tenor Arthur Plamondon and won a scholarship to continue her studies in Paris. Instead, she joined the war effort and got a free boat ride to France. She became a bilingual telephone operator connecting and translating battlefield communications. After the war, she lived in Paris to continue her vocal studies and make her life there until 1939, finally returning to the U.S. in December of 1941. Moving forward, because I live here in the DMV, that's D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Carolyn described my role in the campaign as boots on the ground granddaughter. And I have embraced this role, helping with distributing materials, attending ceremonies, and presenting at various events. As a reserved person, this public role has been transformative. Starting in January 2024, we campaigned tirelessly, delivering flyers, holding meetings in person or online, and with staffers to keep the Hello Girls legacy alive and the campaign moving forward towards gold. Moreover, telling the Hello Girls story has been a profound experience for me. Sharing my grandmother's history and contributing to this campaign has been an incredible privilege and an honor of a lifetime. Their courage during the war and their relentless pursuit of recognition exemplify resilience and purpose, and their Congressional Gold Medal ensures their contributions will finally be remembered. Lastly, an unexpected highlight and honor for my family was the grave marker dedication ceremony with military honors for Edme in May of 2024. It shifted the campaign's perspective, emphasizing the individual stories of these women. We launched a campaign to ensure all Hello Girls have markers and markers that recognize their service. Almost all were buried prior to 1977 without military acknowledgement. My grandmother's unmarked grave, which is just 5 miles from the U.S. Capitol, symbolized the forgotten valor of these women. Speaking of individual stories, I want to share this one particular story with you, which revealed to me, thanks to Elizabeth Cobb's extensive research, and the vast collection of Grace Banker's memorabilia in Carolyn's possession, Elizabeth sent me a letter written by my great-grandmother on behalf of her daughter, my grandmother, hoping to secure her daughter's overdue war bonus in 1936. In the letter, she describes Edme's training, military service, and I quote, "She had the honor to be chosen to represent or typify the American girl of the Signal Corps abroad in a large, beautiful painting made by the artist Archie Gunn. After receiving this letter and after unsuccessfully searching myself, I asked for help during an online research meeting to find this painting. Carolyn immediately produced an album with this image on the inside cover and read the artist's name, Archie Gunn. We all gasped in amazement. I learned something new and unexpected about my grandmother thanks to this great campaign team. In conclusion, I'm very proud of my grandmother, Edme LaRue. She was a courageous, independent woman with a strong spirit, which actually reminds me of another story I want to quickly tell you. In October of 1922, the Roaring '20s, remember, I discovered my grandmother was a member of a French delegation who was a parachute team for a contest in Saint-Ocel Aerodrome just outside of Rome. This incredible feat, mentioned in the French publication The Aérophile, highlights her adventurous spirit and willingness to embrace challenges both during and after the war. And as Jim loves to say, She probably jumped before they really knew if parachutes could open. So as I was saying, she was an independent woman with a strong spirit, and she had a sense of duty. She lived on 2 continents. She was a veteran of World War I, a survivor of World War II, a music student, a singer, a mother, and a patriot of her time. All these women of the U.S. Army Signal Corps were patriots, and what they accomplished as America's first women soldiers was above and beyond the ordinary. And finally, these women have a medal, a Congressional Gold Medal. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Ayers, and my great-aunt, Olive Shaw, was a member of the second group of Hello Girls to serve in France. I was fortunate enough to have known my aunt. We all called her Auntie Nemo. And just last year, I learned that Nemo was one of the code words used by the Hello Girls during the war. I remember my Aunt mostly as a rather unconventional elderly woman whom our family would visit on Sunday afternoons at the Shaw Shack, her cozy 3-season camp overlooking the Shawsheen River. Through this journey, though, I have also come to know her as the brave and patriotic young woman who, in 1917, while studying music and French at the New England Conservatory, volunteered to go to war when she learned of the Army's desperate need for bilingual telephone operators. After serving in France for over a year, my aunt returned to Boston. And when she learned that the Army would not be recognizing the women of the Signal Corps as soldiers, she joined the 60-year fight for their veteran status. In the 1930s and 40s, she actually worked here in Washington, D.C., for Congresswoman Edith Nourse Rogers, a House leader in Veterans Affairs. My aunt was one of the few women who lived to receive her honorable discharge in 1979. In fact, her uniform was one of the critical pieces of evidence that proved the Hello Girls were indeed soldiers. She died just a year after receiving her discharge and was the very first veteran to be buried in the newly opened Massachusetts National Cemetery. Although my aunt never had children of her own, she had 5 nieces and nephews, including my father. And many of their descendants around the country worked with us throughout the campaign. Jim Ferris once joked, Donna has at least one cousin in every congressional district. I'm very proud that my son and his girlfriend, my 2 sisters, and 4 of our cousins are here tonight. One of the strategies we used in lobbying members of Congress was to conduct research on the Hello Girls with ties to their districts and states, so that we could point out these connections in our meetings and letters. The more I have learned about these women, the more in awe I am of their adventurous spirit and their accomplishments. We would like to invite everyone to sign up at I believe it's the first table, to join our online Hello Girls Family and Friends group, where we have been sharing the stories of these remarkable women. Since the passage of the bill, our research goal has now shifted to locating more Hello Girls descendants. We've recently connected with over 20 new family members, and several of them are here tonight. It has been so much fun to meet these new friends with whom we share such a unique bond, and to learn the stories of their ancestors. It has been an honor to be part of the effort to secure the Hello Girls Congressional Gold Medal and to work with this amazing team. I am very proud of my Aunt Nemo and of all the Hello Girls, and I am so grateful to everyone here who helped with this campaign. Thank you.
I know it's going a little long, but come on, these stories are just too good. As our celebration does start to wind down, the AEF Headquarters Brass Band Ensemble has gifted us with a special performance of an extraordinary piece titled Answering the Call, which was arranged by a friend of the memorial, Sarah Corey. We were privileged and thrilled by Sarah's talent a few years ago when she arranged a special piece which was debuted again here at the memorial for the 100th anniversary of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Inspired by the World War I service of the Hello Girls, Answering the Call captures the energy, the precision, and the determination of these pioneering telephone operators. Scored for brass ensemble with 2 solo trumpets, the piece reflects the urgency and rhythm of their work, opening with a bold fanfare featuring material artistically built on Morse code patterns, spelling H-E-L-L. There you go. I knew you could do it. Much like the rapid exchange these women handled under pressure, as the piece unfolds, a soaring melody emerges, representing both the teamwork and the spirit that defined their service. The harmonies push beyond the traditional tonality, much like the Hello Girls themselves, who forged new ground in military communications. From its bright, urgent opening to its triumphant conclusion, Answering the Call celebrates the Hello Girls' lasting impact with music as dynamic, unique, and vital as their role was in history. Conducted by retired Army Colonel Timothy Holton, the former commander of Army Band Pershing's Own, here to perform Answering the Call, is the AEF Headquarters Brass Band Ensemble. Our world-class musicians are Adrian Doctor, Christina Allegre, Kevin Paul, and Amy McCabe on trumpet, Claire Bradley on horn, Christopher Buckley on trombone, Ethan Scholl on bass trombone, and Brandon Benson on tuba. I'm done now. Now we're ready to hear. Wow. So we're nearly done, and I'm going to give you a few front-end administrative pointers here. Any of you that parked in the parking garage, please, where you checked in at the front desk, at the front check-in, please talk to our staff there. The gates to the parking garage are closed right now. We will help you get your car out. So, we will soon be having a very special playing sounding of taps by AEF headquarters musician Amy McCabe. One of the things that the Doughboy Foundation does is play taps at 5 p.m. at the World War I Memorial every day. And Amy is dressed in her Hello Girls uniform tonight, and it seems fitting tonight to have one of them to be our taps sounder. Before that, though, we do have a very special guest, and he asked me if he could please come up and make a few remarks about why he felt it was so incredibly important to have the Hello Girls show up in France. General Pershing, please join me.
Good evening. It is a wonderful thing to be here among so much talent and patriotism once again. Unfortunately, tonight, my legendary vanity is being trumped by practicality. I must wear my spectacles, which you will never see a picture of me in spectacles, but I believe after 164 years of age, it's about time. It is my great privilege to pay honor to the women of the Female Operators Units Mobile 1 and 2, Signal Corps, U.S. Army, American Expeditionary Force in France, and also to their chief, Grace Banker. Over 100 years ago, 233 women set off for France to the Great War. Without their committed and tireless efforts, the war to end all wars would have been greatly diminished in our efforts to achieve victory. We as a nation owe them our undying thanks, and thankfully, that process is near completion. Time has not dimmed the glory of their deeds. Please rise for the sounding of taps.
You may be seated. I want to thank again our sponsors, which we know we could never have done this without you. And I hope you enjoyed the food and beverage brought to you by our sponsors. Thank you so very much. Many thanks to all of our speakers, the musicians, to really make this a true celebration, that these women have their rightful place in history. It can never be erased, and we are the place to catch and tell not only their stories, but the stories of our women that are serving and have ever served this nation. So many thanks again to the members of the Hello Girls for their groundbreaking and what they have brought to this nation, and the pride that we all feel here at the Military Women's Memorial to be the place to tell their story forevermore. Please be safe as you get on the roads. Don't forget to visit. Our gift shop is still waiting to see you. And again, I think Elizabeth Cobbs or Jim Theris will gratefully and willingly autograph for you. Be safe on the roads, please. And good night, everyone.